Well, folks, it's time for another great show here where we're going to be discussing Russia, China, and Ukraine. And of course, we've got some amazing folks that'll be talking about it, including my good friend, somebody that I'm glad to call a friend, and somebody that I'm glad to say I have a great deal of respect for. He has definitely been involved in the world of politics, having worked in the Russian army when he was there in Russia, and also having done some living in the country of Ukraine, which is actually the country that is being invaded right now. And of course, here on the network, he is a fellow anchor and does an investment show and also does a chess show. So without any further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce my good friend, Sasha Starr. Sasha, always glad to see you, always glad to be here. Even sometimes when we have disagreements, we oftentimes respect each other and all of that. So I always have a great deal of respect for you and enjoy your conversations and what you are all about. So I just wanted to say hello and welcome you to this important discussion. And I know we're doing these shows every Tuesday and Friday where we're discussing what is happening there in the Ukraine. So definitely want to welcome you to your show and turn it over to you and get on out of here. But I just want you to know that I am definitely a friend of yours and have a great deal of respect for you and all of that.
Mark, thank you very much. Yes, there are cases when we agree to disagree, and that's part of our discussions, part of doing business. And I would like, without much delay, introduce my esteemed panelist, retired U.S. Army General Chris. Please welcome to the show. Of course, Chris Greco. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you. Good. And Sasha, I really appreciate you promoting me to general, but actually I'm a lieutenant colonel, which I just want to make sure that. But I'm a general in your eyes, so I appreciate that.
Look. Actually, it's even better because I always feel inequality because I'm a Soviet Army veteran, of course, never general. Because after my service, 3 years later, I left Soviet Union for good. Who knows? Yes. Maybe I could become a general, but nobody knows. So sure. Now, neither of you or myself are generals of any armies. Okay?
Thank goodness.
But we're veterans, that's for sure.
That's right.
So let's see now. Really, never mind that I was born in Ukraine in the city of Odessa, and right now it's almost being occupied after the first time ever since 1944, when it was on April 10th, was liberated from the German fascists. And now, 2022, it's about being occupied by Russian fascists. How you play it in history? How that could ever happen?
Well, I think... Well, first of all, it all depends, I guess, your perspective, right? Occupied by Russians, I guess authoritarian fascists, whatever you want to call them. But in the Russians' eyes and Putin's eyes, I shouldn't say the Russians, but in the Putin's eyes, it's being liberated again, right? Being liberated from the fascists.
From whom? Yes, from whom?
Yeah, from the fascists that were there in Ukraine. 245,000 of them fought with Nazi Germany, not taking into account that the majority of populations fought with the Soviets. But that fascism still exists within Ukraine. See, that's what Putin is thinking. So, I mean, I'm sure he's not thinking that way. I'm sure he's thinking that, hey, I want this land because I do not want somebody living next to me that has so much good in that country, from the standpoint of wealth, happiness, prosperity. Nope, they can't exist next to us. I'm just going to go in there and make sure I liberate them from that prosperity and give them what we have in Russia, which is good old fashioned misery. So that's where we're trying to get to. I mean, because it goes back to where Putin has always been and will always be a Soviet. That's what he was. I mean, he loved being in the KGB. He loved being in East Germany during that time. So that's what he's doing. But I wanted to get off track here just for a second. Sasha. And I want to point out that what's going on in China is very interesting. And I noticed that one of the things that Biden's press secretary said is we are not going to take the focus off of the Indo-Asian area. And, this is just me talking, and I don't know the location of the Seventh Fleet or Sixth Fleet, Seventh Fleet, whichever the fleet is. I think it's the seventh that's in the Pacific. It might be Sixth Fleet. But basically, what I would do, and this is me talking, right? Chris Greco, retired guy. I would take right now a carrier battle group and I would put it as close to Taiwan as possible. I would show the Chinese that if you do anything against Taiwan, we are going to react. And I'd get the Australian Navy to help out. I'd bring them up against it. I'd get, whatever type of navies I wanted to get, I would go up there and I would just anchor, right there, or just sit right there, because the Chinese at this point, we learned our lesson in Ukraine about no-fly zones, right? We should have set up something in Ukraine while they had those troops amassed to figure out things, but we didn't do that. So we need to set up right now around Taiwan so that there's no question that the U.S. will in fact support Taiwan if the Chinese attempt to go in there and take that over. That the Ukraine is the Ukraine. At this point, the only thing we can do is contain. If we put a no-fly zone in there, we're going to have issues like crazy. Should we do it? Yes. Can we do it? No. At this point, no NATO country is going to sit there and say we're going to join hands with you and do that. It would be a U.S. led only. Now, a couple of things said in the last show. I remember you saying about there's no written agreement. Also, there was an inference that there was 20,000 NATO troops there in Ukraine. That's already been proven false by the EU. There was 6,000 U.S. troops doing a joint exercise with the Ukrainians that they had been doing for like 25 years. So it's not that they were there because they wanted to have NATO cooperation. It was there because they had signed an agreement with Ukraine that they would conduct this exercise every year. I can't remember what it's called, Point Guard or something like that. So, anyways, that's my deal on China. But yeah, that's why is he a fascist? Sasha. At this point, fascism and the far left and far right kind of meet with Putin somewhere along the line there. He's
Okay, so his beliefs. I mean, what I would prefer not even to call that name Putin, because it's becoming almost a swearing word. It's definitely a swearing, because the only worse. I thought that somebody who is worse than Putin would be Hitler, but now Hitler is a little child compared to Putin, because Hitler never had a red button to ignite a Third World War or that Second World War, whatever it might be, but nuclear war. Okay, let's put it this way.
Thank God.
And I remember when Hitler and the German army committed all the horrible atrocities, specifically killing 6 million Jews during Second World War, he was always trying to make sure the German army would not be directly involved in that, but rather local people. I don't want to name any country or nationality, but there are more than enough who were involved in that, on, because he believed that this is it's not very good for soldiers' morale, and it's not only that, it would be even difficult to explain what's going on, how you can kill innocent civilians, children, women. So he was always preferred to do it with somebody else's hands, not German soldiers. He had special ersatz battalions who were doing that, but that's a different story, and I don't want to really go into that because this is horrible stuff. It's unique in history, never was happened before, never after. However, what's happened now in Ukraine? So Putin, for his beliefs, sorry for naming him, for his beliefs, and his beliefs is, as our previous guest on previous show mentioned, that his goal was denazification of Ukraine, right? The demilitarization. Wait a second, denazification. So he believes that Ukraine is a Nazi country, of which president of that country happened to be 100% Jew, and the prime minister happened to be Jew. 100%. So how that Nazist country can be ruled by Jewish president and prime minister? Not only that, they're extremely popular. Zelensky won his presidency with a vote, I think, well over 73%. And right now his rating is 90.
Oh yeah.
93%. So where is Putin coming with the idea of denazification if it's not a complete 100% lie, never mind misrepresentation?
Yeah, I think, me personally, I think the reason he wanted to talk about denazification is because of those people that had, been part of the camps in Ukraine, that had fought with the Nazis in World War II, which is a minority of population. But that's like saying Croatia. Croatia was an ally of Nazi Germany.
Yes.
Now, did Serbia go in and try to take Croatia? Well, so we had to go into Bosnia when Bosnia was happening, and we had to kind of straighten it. Not we, but the UN had to do that. And I think that the idea behind that person who will not be named, that type of person, is that. And let me see if I can do this. Let me see if I can share with you. I want to share with you my screen. I want to show you. See if I can actually do it here. I wanted to show you. Let me show you the entire screen here. Let me see if it'll do it. So let me show you. Hopefully, I can show you what I have here. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? No?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this is what they call a word cloud. You can get this on wordcloud.com. But basically what it did was I took his 2007 speech that he gave. This is Putin's now speech. And you can see what this is this is fine, whatever. So, whoops, sorry. So this is 2007. So you can see the number one word in this in 2007 was Russia, right? Mm-hmm. Russia. Iran is down here. Energy, international. In other words, there's nothing here that really shows. I mean, the most he talks about is weapons, okay? Mm-hmm. States, all that. Now look at the one he gave in 2021. Boom. All of a sudden, the highest word that's used is Ukraine. NATO is used here. Russia is like is one. So Ukraine and Russia are well used within this area. And then Ukrainian and Russian, national. So people. So all of a sudden, this whole thing has changed. The whole thing changed from this Russia into this Ukrainian Russian. So that's, I just wanted to point that out, that this is something that is something that is used. I don't know whether you could see it all or not. I don't know. Could you see it? Actually see the word cloud, Sasha? Could you see that?
No, not right now. No.
Okay, right. No, but before.
Yes.
So that's easily too. That's called text analysis, right? So, oh, cool. So the bottom line is that you have this type of personality that all of a sudden in 2007 was all about international. It was all about Russia. Oh, it's all okay. It's all about Russia. Then all of a sudden things started to change. And 14 years later, he's talking about Ukrainian Russia. So it's his whole mentality, perspective on things changed in that 14 years. The cause of it, it could be that he wants. You notice how he's taking the nuclear power plants, Sasha? He took those nuclear power plants. He needs nuclear power. I don't know how much nuclear power Moscow has. I don't know if they have any.
They have some
They have some.
nuclear power
Okay,
stations.
so they have some.
It's well known Soviet technology. Even Chernobyl, it was in fact a Soviet nuclear power plant,
Right.
and they're not very good at building this power plant, but they do build them, and they have times from time to time they
Yeah.
have some catastrophes there and so on. But my question to you would be, Chris,
Yes.
I'm just really curious about one thing. Remember, we discussed it actually a couple of times on the show, the airlift to West Berlin in 1948 when there was a Soviet blockade. I remember,
Yes.
and U.S. was able to organize airlift, and there were several flights a day, and they supplied everything. So now, second, first of all, Russians still had probably the largest army in the world at that time, especially in Europe, for sure. Okay. Nevertheless, the U.S. obviously considered that it wouldn't be even discussed at necessity without um, uh, being afraid of Russian retaliation to do this airlift. The same thing happened in Korean War, where U.S. fighters opposed Soviet fighters, and there was a substantial war activities. Now, remember at that time already both Russia and U.S. had nuclear capacities, yet U.S. was facing them fearlessly. Same thing happened in Vietnam. Vietnam U.S. fighters were opposing Soviet fighters, and they were fighting again without any fear.
Well,
So,
yeah.
is now U.S. so fearful of Russian retaliation that they cannot put a no-fly zone over neutral country with which they had war exercise, which considered to be friendly country to the West? What a shame! How that could happen?
Yeah, it's so let's go back to 1948. 1948, we were yeah, US always we always seem to argue from a position of weakness. I don't understand why, but in 1948 the Soviets did not have nuclear weapons. We were the only country in the world to have nuclear weapons. And Curtis LeMay, who was the I mean, you have to also remember that the United States Air Force was very young. We had just gone into play in 1947. So according to the National Security Act. So now, 1948, we put bombers in England, bombers, B-29 bombers in England, and basically said, hey, Soviet Union, if you shoot down one of our aircraft, one, we're going to send our bombers into Moscow. And they didn't have any way of retaliating. But for whatever reason, the Soviet Union just kind of like said, screw you. Here's our corridors. We're going to give you 3 corridors to get into Germany. Tempelhof and the Tempelhof. And there was, yes, so it went from Frankfurt to Tempelhof. And they had 3 corridors to do that with. From the French.
Tempelhof is an airport in West Berlin.
That's right. So
Yeah,
there was only, and it went from Frankfurt to Tempelhof. That was it.
yes.
And well, that was Frankfurt was the U.S. side. They went from another place for the French, another place for the British. So that's where they went into. And so they gave 3 corridors that if you come out of those corridors, we will shoot you down. So we didn't just do like, there were so many sorties that the Soviets had nothing to do but to lift the blockade. People were getting resupplied at such a fantastic level that the Soviets said, well, this is ridiculous. We're done here. So that was it with that. So that was 1948. Korea and Vietnam, both of those, basically the Soviets provided aircraft and in some cases pilots, although they'll never say that, pilots to both North Vietnam. And the main thing was the Chinese. It was Chinese that were giving aircraft, the MiG-17s and MiG-15s to the North Koreans to fight us, which was hilarious because they were, I mean, we slaughtered them. I mean, our Super Sabres were fantastic. And in Vietnam, the F-4 Phantom and the A-7s and different aircraft just blistered the North Vietnamese. But we had politicians running that in Vietnam and politicians running it in Korea. And that's why, and we have politicians running this thing now. And that is the common thread that goes through whatever. MacArthur wanted to, like I told you before in the show, MacArthur wanted to sow cobalt in the Yalu River in Korea. Cobalt. It would have made basically anybody crossing there or even getting near that river would be irradiated. They would die. And it would be a very quick and ugly death. And Truman said, no, we're not doing that. And he said, we could finish this war right now. Not just now, but we could completely redo Korea. We could get it all set to go, have a democracy. And he said, no, we're not doing that. We're not gonna sow the seed of cobalt in a major river that's being used by the Chinese. So, you talk about H.W. Bush and different aspects. There's a situation that if we would have done it, we would have been considered the worst humanitarian country in the world. But let me tell you something, that would have finished that war. So you have to take a look, and Truman was the one who dropped the first atomic weapon, and he never regretted that. So what you're saying is, yes, the U.S. fought those wars because of of communism. And let me go back to our previous show. Communism was related to the Soviet Union. Communism, when we said communism in the 1960s and 1970s, 1950s, it had to do with the Soviet Union automatically. If you said communist, Soviet Union, and so in other words, we immediately identified communism with the Soviet Union. Terrorism, when somebody's talking about terrorism, all of a sudden we couldn't get that thing. Like when you talk about Nazis, you talk about, oh yeah, that was Germany, that was Hitler. We talk about, communism. Oh yeah, that's Soviet Union, and they're bad. They're bad people. They're bad. It's a bad country. So we don't want that. And
Chris, number one, the communism is a teaching, a philosophical teaching of Karl Marx, which was never implemented in any country in the world, including Soviet Union.
I agree.
Okay, so when you call somebody communist, you may refer that he is a sympathizer with the teachings of Karl Marx.
That's right.
But if somebody is sympathizer of Karl Marx, he should read his books, Das Kapital. And in his books, he was writing that Russians is the most despised nation in the world, and all there and Slavs should be immediately all destroyed and killed.
Executed.
That's what Karl Marx was teaching. So somebody who loves communism and read Karl Marx and still loves communism, that's a lot.
Something wrong.
There's something wrong with these people. Number two, okay, I can go as far as agree that Soviet Russia, Soviet Union or whatever, it was a socialist country.
Yes.
That's for sure, 100%. Now, but even though they never, ever allowed themselves to do any atrocities comparable, even close to what's Putin doing now in Ukraine, where he considered Ukraine is the same nation. That's his words, that Russians and Ukrainians are the same nations. Whom he's fighting, what kind of, what he's saying, the Nazis in Ukraine, really, with a country where has a Jewish president, who has a popularity rating right now over 90%, way much more popular than, whom I'm talking about.
Yeah, Russia. I agree. Yeah.
So his pretenses and what he's doing, his brutal killings of innocent civilians, women, and children is unexcusable for
It is.
any speaker in the Western world, including our guest in previous program, to sympathize and explain and saying, well, Putin, he had his motives and he had this and that. You know what?
Didn't
It
we do
comes
that with
to the
Hitler? We did
point.
that with Hitler, right? We did that with Hitler. We did basically said, "Hey, he's got to go into Sudetenland because he wants to. He's an okay guy," type thing. Isn't that
I'll
the
tell
same
you
thing?
one thing. Putin, I have to say that, is way much more dangerous than Hitler for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Number one, Hitler never had red button to start a nuclear war. Putin has one. And if he will not be able to prevail in Ukraine, he will use it. So what is West is waiting for? So he will, let's see, he will end up with Ukraine. He will level. He will never will take Kiev without leveling it and
Oh
absolutely
yeah,
destroying
I
it.
agree.
That
I agree.
that God forbid city will never ever exist for next 1,000 years. So what next comes will come European cities, and either they will do as France did during Second World War. Okay, okay, okay. Yes, come on
Yeah.
in, come on in. Okay, so you stay here, we stay there. Okay, we can exist. Okay, we'll give you a few Jews to kill. So, okay, we are with you. Is that what's waiting? So maybe now, when Ukrainians provide such heroic resistance, resistance and shows incredible weakness of Russian army, maybe now is the time to strike because it's unavoidable. The world is already at war. So,
That's
okay,
yeah.
so he didn't step his boot on the NATO countries. So he will anyway. Don't you agree that it will happen anyway? So
Oh,
what the US say? Oh, Mr.
yeah.
Putin, you know what? We didn't really understood what you were saying. But what do you need actually? Oh, you
Well,
need this and that. Okay, you want to have Paris. Paris is a very nice city, beautiful restaurants, food, wines. Come on, take it. They are not going to oppose you.
yeah.
Hey,
I mean,
Macron, come here. Give it the keys to Mr. Putin. Okay.
yeah. So I mean,
What
it's
what
a
is West is waiting for?
yeah. I think we have to draw the old line in the sand thing where you sit there and say, look, this is where we stop. This is where we're going to stop. Now the thing is that I have yet to see a UN resolution to like with Kuwait to say, look, you get your troops out of Ukraine. That's what got us into Kuwait in the beginning. There's no UN resolution that says you will get your troops out of Ukraine and you will do so. And we're going to form a coalition and we're going to set up shop by Moldova and Poland and the rest of those areas and say, guess what? You get your troops out of there, or by God, we're going to throw them out. And so that's what we're faced with because we didn't do the things in the beginning that we should have done. There's no threatening this guy. When you have 100,000 troops on the border, this is what you have to do. And let's get to something else about the Iran nuclear deal. Now we have Iran that's they say a few weeks. I don't know if it's a few weeks. I think it's probably a little bit longer than that, but not much longer than that. They're going to have a nuclear weapon. If Iran has a nuclear weapon, now look at what happens with Iraq and the rest of those areas. And let me tell you something. I'll tell you where Iran is going to align. They're going to align with Russia because
They always
they're
align with
crazy.
Russia.
Yeah.
So you see, as much as the strategic idea of releasing Iranian oil to world market is a healthy and appropriate one at this time, but the problem is that Iran can agree to all the deals that they will continue to develop their nuclear armament, and then they will put some oil on the market, and then they will withhold the rest to hurt the West, and the West has nothing to do,
That's right.
absolutely, to it, because you know that they will listen what Russia will tell them to do.
Exactly.
So right now, it appears to me that West's attitude is, as much as they help Ukraine with arms and other things, but refusal to take control of the skies over Ukraine. Ukraine is an independent country, friendly to the West, and wanted to become part of the West. It's ruthlessly attacked without any reason by Russia, destroyed absolutely all Russian city or Ukrainian cities, killing all civilians, children, and inflicting uh, incredible damages comparable only to what's happened to Dresden during the bombardment of Allies during the Second World War. There is no other comparison. So the West is taking a decision to keep helping, waiting for outcome, and it seems to me that it would be easy if there would be a certain outcome relatively quickly. Let's see, in a few days, a week time. Okay, so Russia would take over Ukraine. So then you will negotiate with Russia. So, okay, you can do this and that, but don't do this and that, or so on. And, or another scenario is that the war will not be over most likely in the next few days. There is another scenario is that Ukraine, you know that there are already 20,000 troops from the West, including US, England, Canada, Poland, many other countries. There are 20,000 army veterans who were fighting, who are experienced. There are 300 troops came from Georgia, all equipped, all very experienced fighters. There is a group from Israel came to fight on the side of Ukraine. So that, remember, that war is not will be over quickly.
No.
Now, guess what? Once Ukraine, Russia already used 100% of their arms, the armed forces, mobilized around 200,000 troops. They already used all of that. So now they're bringing fighters from Syria because Syrians supposedly have experience to fight in house to house and these rebels war
Against the rebels. Yeah.
like Stalingrad's scenario, right? They're prepared to pay them $300, and once they will be killed, they will have 70 girls to entertain them and so on. My question is, do they really need $300 when they will get into paradise? I don't. They don't need because they will have everything for free there. So, so compare that to 20,000 of experienced army veterans from U.S., England, Canada, Poland, and other countries.
Do you know
That's a
when
lot of stuff.
Iran and Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war, they used to put minefields between Iran and Iraq,
Yeah.
and the Iranians would sit there and say, "Okay, you're going to go across that minefield, and if you believe in Allah, then you will get across without a problem. If you explode, then you really didn't believe in Allah." And that's the way. I mean, that's the way some of this stuff went on. I mean, it was a debauchery of their religion. You know, it was a shameful aspect of doing that. But it was done, and that's I think Putin is not beyond that. I mean, he's not beyond doing something that is complete, just just debauchery of whatever he believes in order to get what he wants. And what he wants is Ukraine. He wants Ukraine slaughtered. He wants Ukraine razed to the ground. He wants to prove a point that I will do this, and I will do it anytime you let me do it. And that's the bottom line on it.
So, do you think West is better off just to watch with a little help, which it does provide, I must admit? But generally speaking, is it good strategy for US and the West just to wait until Putin may actually prevail?
Well, like I said, I would put up the no-fly zones in every single country. Of course, you can't do it in Belarus, but I would put all these. I'd put no-fly zone all along that border. And the minute, because when they get to Kiev, they're going to get close to the border. They're going to have to cross the border in order to perform some of their bombing runs. And the minute they cross that border, shoot them down. Say, nope, you're violating the border, bang, you're down. And let me tell you something, after they do that 2, 3, 4 times, all of a sudden they're going to sit back and go, well, we're going to have to do our bombing runs somewhere else. And guess what? When you do that, now you can set up your surface-to-air missiles and you can just take them out right at the border of Ukraine and Poland, or Ukraine and wherever it's going to be. So the thing I'm scared about, and I'm really, really scared about, is Moldova. I'm really, really concerned about Moldova. I think that, that's another it's a small country, smaller than Ukraine. And they, I know, are sitting back going, man, this is right at our border. And I'm just really scared that Putin is going to sit there and say, something, next is Moldova. We're going
But
to take
they already have a Platzdarm for the attack on Moldova, this so-called Tiraspol Republic, which is a Russian enclave right on the border. It's between Ukraine and Moldova. So they call it a sort of kind of independent republic, quote unquote.
Like a neutral zone.
But I'll tell you, I think, unfortunately, we have to finish our program for today. All I wanted to say is that my prediction is that with each day, Ukraine is getting stronger and stronger. The new volunteers from the West, and most of them are, if not all of them, are all experienced veterans, and they've been in hot points around the world, actually fighting on the ground. These people now numbered, say, 20,000. Few more days, it will be 50,000. Well-armed, dedicated professionals. The more and more arms are coming to Ukraine. I think in approximately, I would say, a week time, maybe even a few days time, they will start offensive, and they will get rid of this horrible Russian army, which is killing innocent people. And that's where will come the accountability. What is accountability? I already said on one of the programs, when Russian army got into Germany in 1945, 1.5 million German women were raped. And those who supported Hitler and screaming Heil Hitler, and those who were indifferent to Hitler, and those who hated Hitler, all of them, there was no distinction. Same thing happened to Russians. All of them will pay the price, already started to pay through the economic sanctions. Those who love Putin, those who hate him, and those who are indifferent. Sorry, but that's
that's certainly your perspective, and I respect that.
Thank you very much, Chris. All the best to our listeners. We'll meet again on Friday at 11 o'clock.
До свидания.
До свидания. Слава Україні!